There was once a fisherman who was called Salmon, and his Christian name was Matt. He lived by the shore of the big sea. Where else could he live? He had a wife called May. Could you find a better name for her? In winter they dwelt in a little cottage by the shore, but in spring they fitted to a red rock out in the sea, and stayed there the whole summer until it was autumn. The cottage on the rock was even smaller than the other. It had a wooden bolt instead of an iron lock to the door, a stone hearth, a flagstaff, and a weathercock on the roof. The roof was called a holta, and was no larger than the marketplace of a town. Between the crevices there grew a little rowan tree and 4 alder bushes. Heaven only knows how they ever came there. Perhaps they were brought by the winter storms. Besides that, there flourished some tufts of velvety grass, some scattered reeds, 2 plants of the yellow herb called tansy, 4 of a red flower, and a pretty white one. But the treasures of the rock consisted of 3 roots of garlic, which May had put in a cleft. Rock walls sheltered them on the north side, and the sun shone on them on the south. This does not seem much, but it sufficed May for an herb plot. All good things go in threes, so Matt and his wife fished for salmon in spring, for herring in the summer, and for cod in winter. When on Saturdays the weather was fine, and the wind favorable, they sailed to the nearest town, sold their fish, and went to church on Sunday. But it often happened that for weeks at a time they were quite alone on the rock Aholta, and had nothing to look at except their little yellow dog, which bore the grand name of Prince. Their grass tufts, their bushes and blooms, and the sea bays and fish, a stormy sky, and the blue, white-crested waves. For the rock lay far away from the land, and there were no green islets of human habitations for miles around. Only here and there appeared a rock of the same red stone as Aholta, besprinkled day and night with the ocean spray. Matt and May were industrious, hard-working folk, happy and contented in their poor hut, and they thought themselves rich when they were able to salt as many casks of fish as they required for winter, and yet have some left over with which to buy tobacco for the old man, and a pound or 2 of coffee for his wife, with plenty of burned corn and chicory in it to give it flavor. Besides that, they had bread, butter, fish, a beer cask, and a buttermilk jar. What more did they require? All would have gone well, had not May possessed with a secret longing which never let her rest, and this was how she could manage to become the owner of a cow. "What would you do with a cow?" asked Matt. "She cannot swim so far, and our boat is not large enough to bring her over here, and even if we had her, we have nothing to feed her on." "We have 4 alder bushes and 16 tufts of grass," rejoined May. "Oh, yes, of course," laughed Matt, "and we have also 3 plants of garlic. Garlic would be fine feeding for her." "Every cow likes salt herring," rejoined his wife. "Even Prince is fond of fish." "That may be," said her husband. "Methinks she would soon be a dear cow if we had to feed her on salt herring. All very well for Prince, who fights with the gulls over the last morsel. Put the cow of your head, mother. We are very well off as we are." Mai sighed. She knew well that her husband was right, but she could not give up the idea of a cow. The butter no longer tasted as good as usual in the coffee. She thought of sweet cream and fresh butter, and of how there was nothing in the world to be compared with them. One day, as Matt and his wife were cleaning herring on the shore, they heard Prince barking, and soon there appeared a gaily painted boat with 3 young men in it, steering towards the rock. They were students on a boating excursion, and wanted to get something to eat. "Bring us a junket, good mother," cried they to May. "Ah, if only I had such a thing," sighed May. "A can of fresh milk, then," said the students, "but it must not be skimmed." "Yes, if only I had it." Sighed the old woman still more deeply. "What, haven't you got a cow?" Mai was silent. This question was struck to her in the heart that she could not reply. We have no cow, Man answered, but we have good smoked herring and can cook them in a couple hours. All right then, that'll do, said the students as they flung themselves down on the rock, while 50 silvery white herring were turning on the spit in front of the fire. What's the name of this little stone in the middle of the ocean? Asked one of them. Aholta, answered the old man. Well, you should want for nothing when you live in the Sea King's dominion. Matt did not understand. He had never read the Finnish folk tales and knew nothing of the sea gods of old, but the students proceeded to explain to him. Ahti, said they, is a mighty king who lives in his dominion of Aholta, and has a rock at the bottom of the sea, and possesses besides a treasury of good things. He rules all over fish and animals of the deep. He has the finest cows and the swiftest horses that ever chewed grass at the bottom of the ocean. He who stands well with Ahti is soon a rich man, but one must beware in dealing with him, for he is very changeful and touchy. Even a little stone thrown into the water might offend him, and then as he takes back his gift, he stirs up the sea into a storm, and drags the sailors down to the depths. Ahti owns also the fairest maidens, who bear the train of his queen, Welamos, and at the sound of music they comb their long flowing locks, which glisten in the water. Oh! Cried Matt. Have you worships really seen all that? We have as good as seen it, said the students. It's all printed in a book, and everything printed is true. I'm not so sure of that, said Matt as he shook his head. But the herring were now ready, and the students ate enough for 6, and gave Prince some cold meat, which they happened to have in the boat. Prince sat on his hind legs with delight, and mewed like a pussy-cat. When all was finished, the students handed Matt a shining silver coin, and allowed him to fill his pipe with a special kind of tobacco. They then thanked him for his kind hospitality, and went on their journey, much regretted by Prince, who sat with a woeful expression, and whined on the shore as long as he could see a flip of the boat's white sail in the distance. May had never uttered a word, but thought the more. She had good ears, and had laid to the heart the story about Ahti. How delightful, thought she to herself, to possess a fairy cow! How delicious every morning and evening to draw milk from it, and yet have no trouble about the feeding, and to keep a shelf near the window of dishes of milk and junkets, but this will never be my luck. What are you thinking of? Asked Matt. Nothing, said his wife, but all the time she was pondering over some magic rhymes she had heard in her childhood from an old lame man, which were supposed to bring luck in fishing. What if I were to try? Thought she. Now this was Saturday, and on Saturday evenings Matt never set the herring net, for he did not fish on Sunday. Towards evening, however, his wife said, Let us set the herring net just this once. No, said her husband, it's a Saturday night. Last night was so stormy, and we caught so little, urged his wife. Tonight the sea is like a mirror, and with the wind in this direction the herring are drawing towards the island. There are streaks in the northwestern sky, and Prince was eating grass this evening, said the old man. Surely he has not eaten my garlic, explained the old woman. No, but there'll be rough weather by the tomorrow at sunset, rejoined Matt. Listen to me, said his wife. We will set only one net close to the shore, and then we shall be able to finish up our half-filled cask, which will spoil if it stands upon it so long. The old man allowed himself to be talked over, so they rowed out with the net. When they reached the deepest part of the water, she began to hum the words of the magic rhyme, altering the words to suit the longing of her heart. O Ahti with the long, long beard, who dwellest in the deep blue sea, finest treasures have I heard, and glittering fish belong to thee. The richest pearls beyond compare are stored up in thy realm below, and ocean's cows so sleek and fair feed on the grass in thy green meadow. King of the waters far and near, I ask not of thy golden store. I wish not jewels of pearl to wear, nor silver either ask I for, but one is odd, and even is 2. So give me a cow, sea king so bold, and in return I'll give to you a slice of the moon and the sun's gold. "What's that you're humming?" asked the old man. "Oh, only the words of an old rhyme that keeps running in my head," answered the old woman. And she raised her voice and went on. "O Ahti with the long, long beard, who dwellest in the deep blue sea, 1,000 cows are in thy herd, I pray thee give one unto me." "That's a stupid sort of song," said Matt. "What else should one beg of the Sea King but fish? But such songs are not for Sunday." His wife pretended not to hear him, and sang the same tune all the time they were on the water, and Matt heard nothing more as he sat and rowed the heavy boat, while thinking of his cracked pipe and the fine tobacco. Then they returned to the island, and soon after went to bed. But neither Matt nor May could sleep a wink. The one thought of how he had profaned Sunday, and the other of Ahti's cow. About midnight the fisherman sat up and said to his wife, "Dost thou hear anything?" "No," said she. "I think the twirling of the weathercock on the roof bodes ill," said he. "We shall have a storm." "Oh, it is nothing but your fancy," said his wife. Matt lay down, but soon rose again. "The weathercock is squeaking now," said he. "Just fancy, go to sleep," said his wife, and the old man tried to. For the third time he jumped out of bed. "Oh, how the weathercock is rowing at the pitch of its voice, as if it had a fire inside it! We're going to have a tempest and must bring in the net." Both rose, and the summer night was as dark as if it had been in October. The weathercock creaked, and the storm was raging in every direction. As they went out, the sea lay around them as white as now, and the spray was dashing right over the fisher hut. In all his life, Matt had never remembered such a night. To launch the boat and to put to rescue the net was a thing not to be thought of. The fisherman and his wife stood aghast on the doorstep, holding on fast by the doorpost, while the foam splashed over their faces. "Did I not tell thee that there is no luck in Sunday fishing?" said Matt sulkily, and his wife was so frightened that she never even once thought of Ahti's cows. As there was nothing to be done, they went in. Their eyes were heavy for lack of slumber, and they slept soundlessly, as if there had not been such a thing as an angry sea roaring furiously around their lonely dwelling. When they awoke, the sun was high in the heavens, the tempest had ceased, and only the swell of the sea rose in silvery heavings against the red rock. "What can that be?" said the old woman as she peeped out of the door. "It looks like a big seal," said Matt. "As sure as I live, it's a cow!" exclaimed May. And certainly it was a cow, a fine red cow, fat and flourishing, and looking as if it had been fed all its days on spinach. It wandered peacefully up and down the shore, and never so much as even looked at the poor little tufts of grass, as if it despised such fare. Matt could not believe his eyes, but a cow she seemed, and a cow she was to be. And when the old woman began to milk her, every pitcher and pan, even to the baler, was as soon filled with the most delicious milk. The old man troubled his head in vain as to how she came there, and sallied forth to seek for his lost net. He had not proceeded far when he found it cast up on the shore, and so full of fish that not a mesh was visible. "It's all very fine to possess a cow," said Matt as he cleaned the fish, "but what are we going to feed her on?" "We shall find some means," said his wife, and the cow found the means herself. She went and cropped the seaweed, which grew in great abundance near the shore, and always kept in good condition. Everyone, Prince alone excepted, thought she was a clever beast, but Prince barked at her, for he now got a rival. From that day the red rock overflowed with milk and junkets, and every net was filled with fish. Matt and May grew fat on this fine living, and daily became richer. She churned quantities of butter, and he hired 2 men to help him in his fishing. The sea lay before him like a big fish tank, out of which he hauled as many as he required, and the cow continued to fend for herself. In autumn, when May and Matt went ashore, the cow went to sea, and in spring, When they returned to the rock, there she stood awaiting them. "We shall require a better house," said May the following summer. "The old one is too small for ourselves and the men." "Yes," said Matt. So he built a large cottage with a real lock to the door, and a storehouse for fish as well. And he and his men caught such quantities of fish that they sent tons of salmon, herring, and cod to Russia and Sweden. "I'm quite overworked with so many folk," said May. "Girl to help me would not come amiss." "Get one, then," said her husband. And so they hired a girl. Then May said, "We have too little milk for all these folk. Now that I have a servant with the same amount of trouble, she could look after 3 cows." "All right, then," said her husband, somewhat provoked. "You can sing a song to the fairies." This annoyed May, but nevertheless she rode out to sea on Sunday night and sang as before. "O Ahti with a long, long beard, who dwellest in the deep blue sea, 1,000 cows are in thy herd, I pray thee, give 3 unto me." The following morning, instead of 1, 3 cows stood on the island, and they all ate seaweed and fed for themselves like the first one. "Art thou satisfied now?" said Matt to his wife. "I should be quite satisfied," said his wife, "if only I had 2 servants to help, and if I had some finer clothes. Don't you know that I'm addressed as Madam?" "Well, well," said her husband. So May got several servants and clothes fit for a great lady. Everything would now be perfect if only we had a little better dwelling for summer. "You might build us a 2-story house and fetch soil to make a garden. Then you might make a little arbor up there to let us have a sea view, and we might have a fiddler to fiddle to us of an evening, and a little steamer to take us to church in stormy weather." "Anything more?" asked Matt, but he did everything his wife wished. The rock alto became so grand, and so grand that all the sea urchins and herring were lost in wonderment. Even Prince was fed on beefsteaks and cream scones, till at last he was as round as a butter jar. "Are you satisfied now?" asked Matt. "I should be quite satisfied," said May, "if only I had 30 cows, at least the number is required for such a household." "Go to the fairies," said Matt. His wife set out in the new steamer and sang to the Sea King. Next morning 30 cows stood on the shore, all finding food for themselves. "Knowest thou, good man, that we are far too cramped on this wretched rock, and where am I to find room for so many cows?" "There's nothing to be done but to pump out the sea." "Rubbish!" said his wife. "Who can pump out the sea?" "Try with thy new steamer. There's a pump in it." May knew that her husband was only making fun of her, but still her mind was set upon the same subject. "I never could pump out the sea," thought she, "but perhaps I might fill it up if I were to make a big dam. I might heap up sand and stones and make our island as big again." May loaded her boat with stones and went out to sea. The fiddler was with her and fiddled so finely that Ahti and Willamos and all the Sea King's daughters rose to the surface of the water to listen to the music. "What is that shining so brightly in the waves?" asked May. "That is the sea foam glinting in the sunshine," answered the fiddler. "Throw out the stones," said May. The people in the boat began to throw out the stones, splash, 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 right and left into the foam. One stone hit the nose of Willamos' chief lady-in-waiting, and another scratched the Sea Queen herself on the cheek. A third plumped close to Ahti's head and tore off half of the Sea King's beard. Then there was a commotion in the sea. The waves bubbled and bubbled like boiling water in a pot. "Whence comes this gust of wind?" said May, and as she spoke, the sea opened and swallowed up the steamer. May sunk to the bottom like a stone, but stretching out her arms and legs, she rose to the surface, where she found the fiddler's fiddle and used it as a float. At the same moment she saw close beside her the terrible head of Ahti, and he only had half a beard."
"Why did you throw stones at me?" roared the Sea King.
"Oh, your Majesty, it was a mistake. Put some bear's grease on your beard, and that will soon make it grow again."
"Dame, did I not give you all you asked for, nay, even more?"
"Truly, truly, your Majesty, many thanks for the cows."
"Well, where is the gold from the sun and the silver from the moon that you promised me?"
Your Majesty, they have been scattered day and night upon the sea, except when the sky was overcast,"
answered May. "I'll teach you!" roared the Sea King, and with that he gave the fiddle such a puff that it sent the old woman up like a sky rocket to her island. There Prince lay, as famished as ever, gnawing the carcass of a crow. There sat Matt in his ragged grey jacket, quite alone, on the steps of the old hut, mending a net.
"Heavens, mother," said he, "where are you coming from such a whirlwind pace, and what makes you in such a dripping condition?"
May looked around her amazed, and said,
"Where is our 2-story house?"
"What house?" asked her husband.
"Our big house, and the flower garden, and the men and the maids, and the 30 beautiful cows, and the steamer, and everything else."
"You are talking nonsense, mother," said he. "The students have quite turned your head, for you sang silly songs last evening while they were rowing, and then you could not sleep till early morning. We had stormy weather during the night, and when it was past I did not wish to waken you, so rowed out alone to rescue the net."
"But I've seen Auntie,"
rejoined May. "You've been laying in bed dreaming foolish fancies, mother, and then in your sleep you walked into the water."
"But there is the fiddle,"
said May. "A fine fiddle. It's only an old stick. No, no, old woman, another time. We'll be more careful. Good luck. Never attends fishing on a Sunday."